Hi everyone, welcome to the Talga Group quarterly investor webinar. I think it's now sort of 10:32, so I think we'll start. Everyone should be logged in by now. Today we'll hear a presentation from Talga's Managing Director, Mark Thompson, about the group's recent updates. Following Mark's presentation, there will be a Q&A. Thank you to everyone who has submitted a question ahead of time. You can also submit a question during the presentation through the Q&A function on Zoom. We've received quite a few questions, so if we don't get to your question, feel free to get in contact with us after the webinar at info@talgagroup.com. I now welcome Mark Thompson, Managing Director of Talga Group. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Candace, and welcome everybody. I will definitely scoot through in the effort to get into questions, but let me just predominantly update you on what's happened during the last quarter in particular. Please note our usual disclaimer of all the information in this presentation. Just to refresh everyone, for those of you that don't know, we produce not only sustainable but very high performance materials. We tend to make more premium, faster charge materials that are particularly useful in the developing markets in the industrial world, also that are very important for defense, as well as what parts of the world call the new energy applications. So it doesn't mean we're still not making graphene and different products from our graphitic materials, but there's obviously a focus on battery anode materials, and within that, the focus is on premium markets, premium performance segments. And what's rather special about us, of course, is that we're 100% integrated from the mine to the market, and that we own our own technologies, which is turning out to be rather rare and valuable these days. So what does that mean exactly? Well, we own not only do we have patented processes, but the actual equipment we use is from countries that do not fall into the prohibited foreign entity of concern and the foreign entity of concern rules of the USA, the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense and the Department of Commerce and other definitions. And why this is important going forward is that, particularly for some markets, and I think this approach will be taken by defense sectors in other countries, not just the USA, where they have a geopolitical as well as geoeconomic concern to have a robust supply chain, meaning that not only today is 99% of anode materials coming via Chinese operations in one shape or another, even those coming from Japan and Korea originally came via China. But also the equipment that even Western companies use is commonly of Chinese origin and has Chinese computer chips in them and software and things like that that are needed, and potentially licensing issues as well. So I think I've got a little bit on China later on. I'm sorry if I don't, but basically, if I repeat myself then, but essentially with the Chinese regulations that have come in and gone out a little bit to some degree, but came in 23 on natural graphite. And last month, they cracked down on synthetic graphite or artificial graphite. They also, interestingly, came down into the processing area, meaning they actually put export controls that did not previously exist on the actual equipment used for making anodes. So they've come down into calcinators and jet mills and things that are commonly used by Western manufacturers to make stuff. Because Talga has invested in and developed its own processing equipment and routes and technologies, then we are actually free of all of that. And I'm not dead sure, but we may be one of the only ones, we may be the only Western company in the world that is entirely free of the compliant, essentially, with that system in the US from the ground up all the way through. So this turns out to be, of course, it was valuable to us anyway from a long-term strategic point of view. It made us not only stronger, but it gave us more in-house experience in how to make real materials. It gave us independence. But more importantly, we were focused on efficiency. We were focused on extremely high yields and just basically updating what is a lot of, in our opinion, a dinosaur-like equipment being used. So anyway, the processing tech being owned by Talga is actually a big deal. It's not just about the odd patent or something. It goes a lot deeper than that. And it's having quite a profound effect on customers and people in some parts of the world. Just a reminder about some key differentiators then, again, from Talga versus others in the world that we are surrounded with. First of all, we don't make precursors for sale. Of course, we do to make anode material ourselves, but we make battery-ready coated graphite. Just to be more clear, we make the active anode material that is bought by battery companies, and that is relatively rare in the West. And as I said, 100% ownership of our own tech. We have already qualified with various customers and validations underway with many, many more. It's currently being used in products that are being sold under some of the commercial agreements you know of. There are some that are under, and many that are under development. But certainly, we've been validated by clients in many high performance applications, of which we like for pricing and the growth in the markets. We've been making fully coated anode now at a demo, like pre-commercial scale, for about 3 years. So we have a lot of experience in the process, and our teams know what to do and are performing with the requirements of customers that are slowly grinding through the qualification process. And of course, every time they change their chemistry or change their markets and goals, then sometimes you need to requalify stuff, which is why some things in the past haven't come to pass in the public eye that you've seen. And another cool thing about us that's a differentiator is we are not just a one project company anymore. We have not only a modular but scalable facility, which can now use recycled feedstocks from black mass providers, which means we can now have multiple anode production sites globally, which is important. So on the downstream part of our business, from the tech to the experience to now the growth potential of it, it's quite unique in its what it can do, and that differentiates Talga from other, I would say, listed and most private graphite-related companies. On the upstream side, of course, never forget we own this beautiful resource, which is in Sweden, which is a NATO member country now. Very good. It's a very high-grade resource. It's still up there in the world, and of course, it's got battery-sized flake, so it's 100% battery size flake, and all of that we get into the product. So we have extremely high yields of anode per ton. Basically, our grade is not that far off what our anode yield is per ton. We currently have a stockpile with trial mined, which is available for toll processing, which we've been using to feed the EVA plant. But it is interesting now in these times of volatility over the last couple of months that even the stockpiles themselves have become of interest and may be usable in different ways for the benefit of the company. But certainly this is just to show you what the stuff looks like, just to show you that it's real, just to show you that it's already there. And this is, again, a differentiator from someone that's just planning something. We're already well down the road, and people come to our sites, but whether it's the lab in Cambridge or up in Sweden at the mine or down at Luleå at the anode plant, and they get a much better handle on what's going on. So let's get to what's been happening. Quite a lot of progress on the commercial side, which you should see over the next quarter. Something come out from that in the public eye, I would suggest would be my target. Certainly, we've had a lot more validation come back about continued iterations of the Talnode products for different customers. We have continued to advance offtakes, specifically around volumes indicated by them, and there's been a focus not away from auto, but auto itself has actually been flaky, right? Like whether it's Stellantis or VW or anyone, they're all changing they're changing their goals, they're changing their relationships, they're changing their battery suppliers all the time. So auto has actually been a very difficult place to work for the last few years. And fortunately, the battery energy storage systems market has taken off like crazy. It's currently growing much faster than the EV market. And of course, we've discovered that our material is extremely good in fast charge. And this is having big applications in defense and aerospace and robotics and all the new areas. And of course, when it comes to robots, we're not talking about just humanoids. We're talking about the skateboard-sized things that zoom around Amazon warehouses, things like that. We have started a US collaboration with United Catalyst Corporation, which I'll talk to in detail about later, about the USA. And also we were pleased to sign a supply agreement with Aurubis, which follows our one with Altilium in the UK. Aurubis is a very, very large group. one of the world's largest recyclers of non-ferrous metals. And they are one of many groups that are working on recycling of metals from batteries. And we provide the solution for the graphite part of the battery that is not currently being addressed successfully by anyone, but provides a massive opportunity for us. What's happening in that space was quite significant in that we proved that recycled anode could be reused as anode. What's difficult about that, you may say? Well, that would be a workshop, but essentially when you have used a battery or you have lithiated in some way, you're pushing lots of chemicals and forming lots of new minerals and compounds within the material. I never actually thought you'd be able to purify it back out. And I didn't think the fabric of the graphite would be reusable again as performance in an anode, but we have managed to do that. And it was a program that was first developed in the UK, and now we're spreading it around the world, because once you've done that, it means that as long as you've got a supply of black mass graphite being provided by the metals guys, then you could actually have a downstream anode production facility, separate obviously to being linked to the mine. The facility can also use the mined material as well, so there's no downside to that. You've got USA patents were granted very fortuitously while I was over there, both on some of our Talnode and graphene type materials, which all play a role in battery anode materials and in advanced material products as well. The point is that, again, we're protecting our processing tech, we're protecting our products. Again, this is useful for the customers like it, government agencies like it. They'd like seeing the evidence that you have this rights to this technology so that you don't get pulled up along the way. And of course, importantly, the detailed plan with the County Administration Board is being advanced. I think we are seeing their process come to an end extremely shortly, and then that will go on to whatever they produce goes on to the government for a final call, which we can talk about in more detail later, no doubt. We also started, during the quarter, we started trading on the OTCQX, which we hope that as we do more marketing and development of projects and the company itself anyway in the USA, that will just provide a first step of conduit to increase volumes on the OTC that will spill over into demand on the ASX. So it's very timely, and there's some work underway there. We did have some funds come in from the loyalty options that were expiring just a little bit. They've been a little bit above. Sometimes they were in the money, sometimes usually out. It's been a very rough time in the markets lately, but there was some of those were exercised, and we've got some questions about those later. And we're very pleased to have the former Minister for Labour in Sweden, Eva Nordmark, officially join our board, which had to be officially done after a certain process. So that was very, very good as well. And so we've got a slightly, much more effective, leaner board at the moment that's set up a lot better for what we're doing going forward. Just a little word more on recycling, just to be try and be ultra clear. We're not getting into the recycling business as such, from insofar as we are getting one of the products that the metal recyclers produce. So if they want to do something with their graphite, which is currently sitting around in giant stockpiles everywhere, as they recover the lithium, nickel, cobalt, other metals from the battery, the non-metal, which is the graphite, is becoming a bit of an issue for them. We can take that material from them. It can come from the production scrap in the factories or from batteries that have been used. And we get their concentrate or their material from their waste streams. And we then homogenize it, purify it back up to battery grade 99.95% plus. And then we reshape and recoat it so that it comes out again as a high performance anode, meaning that I guess it's very similar to, because it's already been a material that was once qualified and used in a battery, you can imagine that it's already got very high specs. When it comes out, we're just surprised at how our coating, shaping and coating technology was able to lift it to commercial levels, particularly for cycle efficiency of up around 94%. That was really quite shocking to me. and it's been very successful since then. It's already piloted. It's already been scaled. Now the next stage is commercial. We are looking at how we can integrate that into the modular lines at the Luleå plant, which is in this bottom right corner here. You can see stage 1 production of the roughly 20,000 tons of Talnode C is that we could put on some separate lines there, which will be dedicated to making Talnode R. And then Talnode R leads you to what we're doing in the USA. Because we now can use these different feedstocks, it makes it easier to look at sites in the world that have got quite a lot of battery recycling and production. And that's where we can now build further duplicates, essentially, of our Swedish plant. Now, you may want to know, well, what does that mean exactly? Well, right now, I guess the way you should look at it is that whatever we've published in the DFS and the feed studies on Vittangi, it would be most auspicious to copy that over to another location, because the designs and engineering and all those things are well understood and advanced. And so you don't really have to reinvent the wheel, and it's modular. So if you want a different scale, you could obviously apply copies of it. But if you want to look at how it performs, you just look at the downstream side. So here in this table, we've just got a very simple chart saying if you build something in America, it doesn't have the mine and concentrator, you have the downstream capex involved. So you could, at the moment, without going into details about how costs and OPEX and all the details would look in a different country, we have done internal studies on some countries. We will talk later about the US, but it's quite well understood. Probably a lot of this has actually been thought of and considered for several years now. We started looking at the USA back in the Biden administration days around the IRA rules and things like that. And we did quite a few studies on sites and potentials over there. But I guess a couple of things have changed. One is that we showed that we didn't necessarily have to import material and change the volume profile of the mine in Sweden to make it work. So that was an important consideration, the fact that you can get a separate feedstock. Number two, obviously the changing government changed a lot of rules and regulations, and also the states themselves started developing lots of different incentives as well. And the geopolitical and geoeconomic landscape has changed. So you put all that together, and right now at relatively low cost, you can look at now different parts, not just the USA, there are other parts of the world too that we will address. But certainly in the short term, that was one worth looking at. So during the quarter, we were actually co-sponsored by the Australian government through Austrade and CSIRO to join them at the North American Battery Show, but also on the road in California. We were in San Fran and Palo Alto, and I personally was up in Nevada. So we were working with government agencies, potential customers, R&D type groups, and we were part of Team Australia at the battery show. And their support is much appreciated, and we would like to continue to do more things with our tech with them, both in Australia or in some sort of intergovernmental cooperations that are underway between Australia, America, and other places like Japan. While I was there, I did go to the White House complex with United Catalyst Corporation, and we had one-on-ones with the National Energy Dominance Council and the Security Council. And we've started quite a good relationship there, I would say, on better understanding what they're after, and also promoting what we can do and coming up with some new ideas about how we can align what we're doing with what they want as well. A few people have asked then, okay, a little bit more color on this. First of all, there's a bit of a battery belt growing in the Midwest of the US, and what that means is it's a combination of not just EV automakers, but it's actually battery companies themselves. And it's not just for EVs, it's for everything. Again, it's for robotics, it's for AI data center backups. There's been a lot of development in the past few years on EVs, but it's actually now spreading into more industrial purposes. We are currently looking at South Carolina more closely. Nothing's been absolutely determined yet, but there are a number of very, very good sites there. South Carolina does have a rather robust package of incentives, including a recycling facility tax credit, which looks spectacularly good, which is 30% of the property costs for if they qualify. And yeah, there's been some rather large grants and bond packages built. So within the federal system of America of incentives, there's also state ones that are very strong as well, and they're very competitive. The Department of Commerce in South Carolina was most professional and welcoming, and we've had very good opportunities to see potential factories and land and permitted sites and things like that with them. And you're surrounded by quite a lot of industry now that's been going ahead in comparison to other parts of the world where a lot of things have been stalled out. United Catalyst Corporation, we announced as a strategic cooperation partner. It's the first of what we hope will be many partnerships in the USA. They are located within this battery belt. They're in Lawrence County in the northwest corner of South Carolina. They're very close to some of the major developments there with BMW and Toyota and Hyundai and others. And we've really appreciated catching up with them. They've got a lot of expertise, not only in recycling, but extremely good permitting and regulatory expertise. And their president, Becky, is a cleared advisor for the Department of Commerce's Industry Trade Advisory Committee on critical minerals. And they've been fantastic to work with, and we look forward to developing that relationship further in the very, very near term. And importantly, during the quarter, so just jumping back out from the USA now back into Sweden, the Industry Leap grant was quite significant, just over 13 million Australian dollars, but it's an actual grant and so this is put in now for finishing off the design and engineering and design of the commercial plant. It's to finish that off and to include recycling into that plant. We're actually expecting to receive the funds this month, and that will go partly towards the project of about 30 million, which is essentially needing to be done anyway on building the first commercial line there in Luleå. So there it's more about low emissions and sustainability and completing qualification of the products to underwrite the balance of the refinery, which is going actually pretty well. So the first 2 quarters of next year will be all of that leading up to that being clear by the end of June. So yeah, we're very much appreciating the European Union and the Swedish Energy Agency. Probably the significance of this is it's the first time we've received state funding. So we have got a 70 million euro grant for the refinery in place already with the European Union through the Innovation Fund. We do have, obviously, the European Investment Bank has pre-approved 150 million euros of debt, of fairly concessional debt, and we've got a bunch of commercial debt potential as well. However, this was the first time we received Swedish money and towards a project, and we're quite excited about that. And we have applied for further grants, both at an EU and the state level, of larger significance to the development. So, this being in the battery materials business right now actually is starting to get good for the first time in many years. Like China's been swamping everything. Everyone's been going slow around the world. Investors have been ahead of it and thinking strategically, but the governments have been very, very slow to respond. So this is important in that it's a bit like someone pulling the plug, or sorry, that's the wrong metaphor, isn't it? This is like the door cracking open for the first time, shall we say, with some parts of the establishment. I'm not watching the timing here, so I've got to be careful. Last slide, just finishing on macro. So what's happening? Well, the big deal that made everything run up a couple of weeks ago was the Chinese Ministry of Commerce cracking down on everything involved in making anodes. Now, so they've already done natural graphite. Now it's spreading into artificial graphite, including production technology, and they're due to come into effect in the next few days. Interestingly, then Trump issued, and this is all public, of course. Trump issued then responded with chucking 100% tariff on all Chinese products, or increasing all tariffs by 100%. So that goes to show how significant this was. Like, it was rare earths and graphite. Rare earths got all the headlines, but the details on graphite were very interesting in how deeply it went down into the technology and processing and treating it as geopolitically sensitive as rare earths. And then we had then Trump met Xi. The White House has announced that those deals are going to come off for that things are going to be delayed by 1 year, that they'll delay the tariffs by 1 year if China delays the implementation of these export controls for 1 year. China hasn't actually said that. Their documentation is still up and valid, and they actually have, as far as we can tell, they have actually not responded to any comment on that. So we, at the moment, we just take the White House's word for it, which is fairly true. But again, it just shows how fragile it is. The big deal, I guess, compared to previous years, in that everything, you think, oh, everything can go back to normal the way it's been, quite depressing for the last few years. Well, maybe not. The media attention to this and the government knowledge now of supply chains is so much bigger than what it was. So investors, media, government groups all now know a heap more about this material, where it's from, what the problems are, that they haven't really seen before. So the awareness of graphite and its role in batteries, which underlay not just batteries for EVs, but batteries for, they're just realizing, oh, gee, they're in the planes and they're in the robots and they're in the drones and they're in they basically hang up everything. And now the internet itself. So these data centers and other parts of the internet that have got batteries in backups or batteries in any part of their process is actually all based on 99% Chinese material. And it's only just occurred to them. And you guys, as anyone that's an investor in Talga knows, this is actually for 15 years what we've been telling people, but it's only just seemingly coming home to roost now for them. So that's what they're waking up to now. Talga is in a unique position to take advantage of that because of having our own developed technology. Currently, we are hearing of disruptions anyway. I've got 6 different lines of people around the world, including governments, telling me they cannot get any material from China at the moment anyway. And they're seeing, and we're starting to see a price signal for the first time in a decade, really, of continuing downward prices from Chinese dumping. We're actually now starting to see some price increases again, just start to trickle through now. So we expect that to continue over the short while. And partially it's because of this macro, but it's also partially because Chinese battery use has just rocketed as well, not from EVs, but also battery energy storage systems. So their actual internal demand has gone up, and that leaves them with less material for everyone else. So the outlook is stronger than ever, in that finally everyone's catching up to the understanding and the knowledge of these supply chains and how fragile they are. They are getting more committed to reshoring some of this, and there's very few Western companies that can actually make the actual material that works. So yeah, and there's a lot more development for it. So I'd say it's getting less speculative, like it's more mature. I guess an analogy may be that we've been through some sort of Lassonde curve of industry knowledge and realizations of the reality, which has been severely distorted by the Chinese overcapacity, which has dried up now. So I'm not. What's that? Is that half an hour? That's about half an hour. So at this point, Candice, if you want to let me know whether I'll get out of this and come back to your questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you for the presentation, Mark, and updating everyone on the group's activities. We're going to move to the Q&A portion of today's session. Once again, thank you to everyone who submitted a question ahead of time or through the Q&A function on Zoom. Some questions have been addressed during the presentation. Others that we received beforehand have been consolidated into one question if several people ask the same thing. So I'll start with the first one. The quarterly mentioned 5 customers have advanced trials to the validation stage. How close are these to completion? And when might we expect to move, or when might they expect to move towards binding agreements?
They're all in train. Some are complete, and it's just discussing and negotiating, essentially arguing about things like price and structure. Obviously, I can't tell you, I can't give you firm times. We never can. I would say that everything to do with this process is marked by customers, to be honest. Like, it's not usually us. The customers that are currently either new to the supply chain or, like, say, for example, most customers in Europe are not, most of the battery production is currently from Asia. So if you're not selling to an Asian battery maker, then you're usually dealing with someone that's is either in the startup phase or they're starting something new. But the real world of battery commercialization is actually very slow and conservative. It takes them a long time to be comfortable to change material. And so, yeah, it's a very, very slow process. And I would say that though we've come to the end, we've already qualified fully with some customers, and we're just having final discussions on agreements, or we're at like a C sample stage and they're nearly there. Yeah, it depends. I can't give you a firm answer on when those things will emerge, because in the past we've had agreements ready to sign or signed by one party and the ASX ready to go for the next day, and something happens during that night, and 2 years later maybe you still don't have something because they internally changed something. But yeah, I'd say we're getting very close, and I'd say that affairs in the world in the last little while have been very effective at helping push them along. So it seems like it's picked up a lot of speed compared to the last 2 years.
Okay, Talga plans to build a near industrial scale demo plant to inform engineering. Could Mark provide details on its expected capacity, location, and whether it could be used to generate early revenue?
Essentially, this gets back to slight modifications to add the recycling capability into our first lines at the anode plant in Luleå. So it's essentially that. So no, it's not a separate or different plant. It starts with, first of all, scaling up the EVA plant that currently exists in Luleå, and having more production, because we've got currently customers are using material from that as in their products. So that needs to scale up along with them a little bit. So I'm not talking about like double or triple. I'm just saying adding more shifts and doing more work to get more output. But what we do want to do now is put that into building the first lines of the commercial plant sooner. That means not necessarily waiting for the mine. If we can finance and get building the anode refinery separately now, we will. The reason why we haven't done that before is because it looked like that they were going to be able to come together, and a lot of the work done on the financing packages was integrated. It was all together, the mine and the refinery. Now, if we have the opportunity to do the refinery separately, then we could actually start building that using toll process material and, of course, recycled material as well, which is available right now prior to any mine being built and concentrator waiting to be commissioned. So it's not a separate plant. It's just about bringing forward the plans as much as we can for the commercial plant that you know of at Luleå.
Okay, that answers quite a few of the other questions that are similar. And one of these is in the same sort of area. Martin Phillips in a industry, he spoke with Dagan's Industry, and he mentioned that it's cheaper to buy recycled graphite than to pay interest to the banks for the mine site. Given the Vittangi ore's ideal properties for anode production, how interchangeable is recycled graphite as an initial feedstock before the mine becomes operational?
Look, it has to be kept separate. The mined material is a bit unique in its high power properties and fast charging properties, whereas recycled material that was already in, say, for example, an EV or a device has similar properties to what it was originally in. So they are two separate products and they have to be kept that way. However, the equipment and processing tech is extremely similar. There's only some small tweaks that we have to make. And yes, indeed, recycled material to buy may be cheaper than mined material to get, but the product it makes is also more of a, should we say, standard product. It's not as high performance as the mined product. So they do actually have to be kept separate. However, that they're kept separate just through the line. So because of our modularity means that everything can go into the same purification process, however, with a few tweaks, but not much. But then each line will just be producing, like, there'll be recycling lines versus the Talnode C lines. and they'll be for different customers. So they're kept separate, and you need that that regularity to that. So yeah, there's not entirely different plants. It's the same plant. It's just you keep them separate in the production lines. They're a bit like gas trains that way, in that you've just got different trains coming off the end. Yeah, I think that answers that for the Dargan's industry quote.
Thanks for that one. Can Talga doggedly pursue one industry segment or customer with a view to building a consistent revenue stream? This admittedly may not be material revenue at this stage. It will, however, build corporate strengths while helping to establish real-life validation and customer success stories that will feed positive corporate momentum.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's certainly been a heck of a journey. I wouldn't say it was ever really based on us changing too much. The original premise is all still there on special ore body, special tech, growing market. That's all turns out to be true. Before the battery, we were a bit too early for the battery boom. That didn't really happen quickly. And so in the meantime, we discovered that we could make graphene. The graphene market has never commercialized the way that everyone hoped. That wasn't a failure of graphene's or our part. That's actually a very non-told story, really, of how the material makers themselves don't want to make better products because they sell less volume. That's the problem with graphene commercialization. Battery anode making, we did our first results in 2018. By 22, we're actually making coated anode, and we've been dedicated. So I mean, we've been well over 5 years of now fully dedicated to that. We do have sales. We do have sales at pricing in excess of our feasibility studies. But yes, it is small volume from it, and you can't normally sell much. It isn't material. So the first lines of the Luleå anode plant is that. So we are in fact doing what you're suggesting. It's just it's taken a hell of a long time to get there, both from the permitting and the finance and the regulatory point of view, and mostly from the shifting customer landscape. I mean, you go back 4 or 5 years and look at a map of all the planned battery plants in Europe and look at them today. I mean, probably 95% of your Western customer base has disappeared because it was overrun by China, very similar to solar panels. And so if you're trying not to sell to China, then you didn't have anyone else to sell to during that time, everything. So yeah, it's been a really rough space to be in and to cope with, but we have persevered, and the perseverance looks like it's about to pay off because now we're one of the few that can actually make material and sell it. So yes, we are dedicated to starting sales as soon as possible through the commercial plant. We already sell some material from the EVA, but the commercial plant will be more material. So we're not planning on doing anything else. Whether we do it, I mean, if you could build another downstream plant, the same thing as the first line of the commercial plant in the US, fed on recycled material, and it's faster and beats everything else, well, then that's great. That's part of it. It's just that you're making and selling anode, not other things.
Okay, due to the modular design of the Talnode C and Talnode R lines, is it possible for a Talnode SI line to also be incorporated into the same site?
Look, it helps a lot once you've got a permitted chemical site and you've got all the rules and regulations in place and you've got air and water and all the other things available and permitted to a degree, then yes, you can have a Talnode, you can have a silicon line in as well, but it does have quite different requirements. There is some special tech and special steps in that process that are not as identical as Talnode R and Talnode C. So Talnode SI would need a little bit more dedication of its own line, and it would need some adapted permitting processes. The reason we don't talk much about silicon anymore is one is that all of our resources are taken up focusing on the graphite side of things at the moment. The silicon side continues to grow. We got our product to a certain stage where it's mature enough now just to talk to people and try and cut deals on it. But the market itself, of course, has continued to take cheap Chinese. You basically get undercut by BTR and everything you want to do. So the problem has been that while everyone continues buying material that's being dumped from China, then it doesn't look as attractive to do, should we say, without someone paying what it's worth. So when the subsidized when the Chinese subsidized companies start selling more at a proper market rate, then that'll change, and we'll come back to silicon when it makes sense to do so. But right now, it would actually just take too many resources away from everything else, and it's ready to go with the right partner and the right customer. We came very, very close to actually launching that, and then a government that was co-funding something felt they changed their politics at the time, and they decided not to build it. When they didn't decide, then the car customer fell away. And then, so we look for similar deals, but we wouldn't want to launch the extra capex of that product unless it's all going to be fully funded and it's all fully tucked away before talking more about it.
Okay. Does Talga intend to release a DFS or publish internally conducted modeling of the US Telnode R opportunity to assist shareholders and the US market to appropriately value the opportunity?
As I've alluded to today, in the short term, one can use what we've published already in Sweden as a very good proxy for whatever we're doing elsewhere. I think I've made that pretty clear. The studies that are being done, what comes out is undecided right now. One of the issues with being a public company and publishing our studies, of course, is that your competitors and various other people that you're working with will see things like costs, like OPEX costs and stuff, and then use that against you in negotiations. So it is a bit difficult. We'll do what we can. We'll do what makes sense and what's good for Talga, which will be good for shareholders. But yeah, right now the proxy is to use our Swedish materials until told otherwise. You can make some pretty good assumptions from that. So yeah, that's all I could probably say to that right now. I couldn't commit to anything either way right now.
Okay. In the last webinar, Mark referred to our McDonald's moment. Could you share how we're progressing towards that vision, specifically in terms of licensing our IP and know-how in technology and processes relating to graphene, graphite anode, and recycling? Are we seeing traction in the market that positions us as a revenue-generating company? I guess you kind of already covered that, but if you'd like to reiterate.
By McDonald's way, is he talking about, the Donald? Is that what he said?
McDonald's moment.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I've already spoken a lot to that. Sorry, it was going to a White House. I think now we've firmed up. I think we've expanded a lot from just being a very, a really good, totally integrated project in Sweden, in Europe, to now having growth opportunities we never had before. Whether licensing will come into that, and whether it's on the IP side or various partnerships, that area has lit up, to be honest. There's a lot of opportunities now we didn't have before because we can now operate in different areas and grow production in different areas. All I can say is that we've increased our chances of success. You don't know for sure exactly which one's going to pay off the first now, but at least now you've diversified to where you can have multiple production sites in parts of the world. As time has gone by, very painfully so for all Talga shareholders, including myself and my family, but what we've ended up with is in a world that by now you've got batteries, like total battery demand is 300% higher than it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Like, it's just crazy growth right now. And almost every market is growing, and the world's products that they're using are also turning more into the products that we make naturally and have natural advantages in. So in some ways, the market's finally maturing, to where we can take advantage of it. That includes with partnerships changing, the geopolitical landscape changing a heck of a lot. We've gone from just relying on Europe to now being able to have a more global stance. And you're also seeing this great bifurcation where America wants to build an entirely secure battery supply chain and critical mineral supply chain separate from what it currently has. That's a bit like, maybe that's not as big as a China in early 2003, 2004, like China rebuilding its entire economy and causing a boom, but it's pretty significant. Like, there's still going to be a lot of things done there. Sure, there'll be waste. Sure, there'll be misallocations, but there'll be some real things happen there. and their relations out into the world. The US is doing battle in different parts of the world with its allies and doing things in various areas, including the Australian government. On the European side, we're seeing the continued slowness, I guess, of the existing apparatus, but we're also seeing a lot more cooperation with the Chinese to allow the Chinese more into Europe, into the European sphere. All the deals with German automakers, with Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, even Porsche, are all doing technology cross deals with China, and it means it probably opens up new opportunities for us to do downstream things with Chinese companies that we didn't have access to before, meaning that there may be partnerships and opportunities that are already coming into Europe and being in production there, and potentially the Middle East as well, that we can participate in without damaging the sovereignty and the autonomy of what we have in Sweden. So yeah, I'd just say that the landscape's getting bigger and better that way, and more clearly understood. And over time, to be honest, there's less people able to take advantage of it, I guess.
Okay, last few questions. One of which is, can you please discuss the main goals and targets for the company over the next 6 months?
Yeah, the first thing, I guess, starting from the ground up. So from the upstream, we want to have that detailed plan and all the permitting for the mine be fully cleared, so the mine and concentrator is able to be go through an FID and commence something there. Regardless, though, we also are looking to do the same for the refinery by itself. If it's possible to get first lines up and running and financed separately, we will. So really the focus is on the anode refinery first, to get that going and produce material at larger scale from that. That also applies to potential in America, where we would only do it if we get funding built in to the opportunity to focus on building something in America as well. And if American interests want to come with us to Sweden, into our either mine or downstream operations there, that is of interest as well, because that would be part of the financing for the Swedish operation. So we're really pursuing both of those towards the fastest commercial outcome. We will enter into new partnerships to develop more opportunities, both corporately. They'll start off with products. There'll be more product joint developments and cooperative agreements with different parties with a longer term view of strategic things they want to do in the sectors in which we operate. So that includes a strategic partner, which we've talked about before. Some of the quality ones take a very long time, and it's not until, say, the last 3 to 6 months that they've really had a bullet put at them, in some cases literally. So they're more available now than they were before. So I think it's on the product development side, you'll see more agreements coming out with people that are both customers and potential partners for expansions downstream. You'll see permitting developments both at the mine and at the refinery. You'll see financing developments in coming parties in both Sweden and other places like America. I think you'll see continued development of the American opportunity, and I'm very hopeful that will extend back into Sweden. You'll see new things happening in that area. So the next 6 months is a bit of a harvesting time. Yes, we're waiting on some things, and we're always waiting on customers and other people in the world to do something, but there's been quite a lot happen in the last few months that is very positive towards landing some of these things. So yeah, I'm not going to give a production target or set date for anything to set. Every time we do that, we've been disappointed for a long time, as you all have been, and but we continue to go full bore as much as we can. you've got quality assets, quality tech, quality people. We'll have a breakthrough eventually when the rest of the world works it out and gets their act together, which seems to be happening now. Then we too will get into a state like you've seen some other companies have with financing packages, with partnership packages. So yeah, we will actually crack it in that time frame, I think.
Okay. Will Talga issue new loyalty options as the original tranche lapsed in September?
Excuse me. No, we have. I wouldn't comment anyway. We're always reviewing our needs. We did that at the time as a very hopeful thing that would pay off for people. For some it did, for some it didn't, obviously. And then we've got more. We have some others are slightly above that price with people in the next share price round. So we can't guarantee things like that. It's we'll just have to review it at the time of our when anything happens. But no, it shouldn't be seen as like a normal replacement thing by any stage. Yeah.
What are your views? I think this will probably be the last question. Do you have any views on the recent Cattle announcement on its sodium batteries, Mark?
Cows making sodium batteries. Oh, CATL. Yeah. CATL's a funny big beast, obviously the world's largest battery maker. I've visited them several times, so we know them fairly well. They operate in our backyard in Germany and in Europe, as well as everywhere else. With sodium ion, the problem is its energy density is about 1/3 of lithium ion, and currently it's basically uneconomic compared to LFP. That's probably not changing, to be honest. Like the optimization and work that's happening with lithium ion and continues is, showing that sodium ion in the rest of the world doesn't work. I would say that the only reason CATL are doing it is because they have some particular customer that wants some super low temperature performance material. So sodium ion's quite good down to like -40. So for small or for very, very limited applications, sodium may work, as many technologies may work in small applications, but it'll end up being less than 2% of the market. CATL, remember, are quite good at releasing information about battery technologies, which scares the heebies out of everyone. And lo and behold, maybe a Western company doesn't go into production because they're scared that CATL's going to swamp it. And the Chinese have been doing this since the mid-90s, and they're probably continuing to do it. So it's really not an issue. You really have to think about what that means in the competitive world of batteries, of all batteries for all applications. Of course, every single thing you hear about in the media, which is usually tremendously infactual and frankly stupid, but this is the way of media connections with universities and R&D tech and stories like this. But the reason someone big and commercial like CATL is doing it is they're big enough that they may have one particular customer that needs that particular tech to work in one particular application. And so they'll build a little line for it. And of course, it doesn't hurt them to do it. They've got 30,000 odd people just in probably R&D alone. So they'll do it. But no, I don't. It doesn't represent any threat whatsoever to lithium ion industry. Can you imagine? So you literally need 3 times the mass of the battery to work sodium ion. So when it comes to whether it's transport or planes or anything else, what's the point? And it's currently actually more expensive, therefore on a watt-hour basis compared to LFP that's available today, well tested, well developed, being mass produced in different parts of the world, already has permits for everything, including whatever transport and so forth. So the sodium ions that CATL's doing does not represent the start of some giant overwhelming thing at all. It just represents a very small subsector of the market, much as any other battery tech you'll hear about, like lithium sulfur, lithium air, lithium graphene. Someone's trying to talk to me about lithium aluminium. They're all in the same basket. You may find someone that needs 500 meg or something of them at some stage in the world. In the meantime, you've got terawatts or hours of lithium ion that's actually being used, and they're all being run on graphite anodes. That includes, we can have the same discussion about solid state. It's a bit like nuclear fusion. Get back to me when you finish that and put that into large scale production. So yeah, we don't see it as an issue at all. We have done some work in sodium ion. We actually have got some experience in it with Faradion and a few years ago. So I feel we understand it fairly well. But of course, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll make sure that we're across it. And if there's a way to sell a product into it, we'll do that. But certainly it doesn't represent a threat to the anode industry based on graphite.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for your presentation, time answering questions, and thank you to everyone for attending. Keep an eye out for our next investor webinar, which is likely to be early next year, and a reminder that we have our AGM coming up on the 20th of November. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.